We start today's show with some big breaking news, and we're going to go straight to Fox News correspondent David Spunt for the details. David.
Well, Will, good to be with you. This is coming out of the Justice Department. Fox News can confirm that Attorney General Pam Bondi today signed an order directing an unnamed U.S. federal prosecutor to take evidence to a grand jury relating to an alleged conspiracy to tie then 2016 candidate Donald Trump to the country of Russia. Now, Fox News reviewed the one-page order just hours ago signed by the Attorney General. A source familiar with the probe confirms this as well, while a DOJ spokesperson declined to comment on this report of an investigation. Fox is told Attorney General Bondi is taking the referrals from Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, quote, very seriously. The spokesperson says that Bondi believes there is, quote, clear cause for deep concern, end quote, and a need for the next steps. Now, this move, Will, comes just a couple of weeks after the Director of National Intelligence, you see her right there, Tulsi Gabbard, sent a criminal referral to the Justice Department regarding what she says proves there was a conspiracy to undermine Trump's candidacy and later his first term in office. Now, to be clear today, there are no charges that have been filed, no indictments. This is incredibly early in the process. What we have here is taking evidence the Justice Department believes it has to a grand jury to secure an eventual indictment or indictments. We don't know exactly where the grand jury will meet. We don't know who will go before the grand jury, and that's by design, because grand juries determine if there's enough evidence to indict, and grand juries are secretive in the American legal system, so it's normal not to know all of the answers. Again, the DOJ declining on any comment regarding this investigation. But, Will, big news, this was signed by the Attorney General Pam Bondi today to take this evidence of an alleged conspiracy to a grand jury with the hope to get an indictment or multiple indictments. Will?
That is big news, David, and congratulations to you. Excellent reporting on being first on this order signed today by Attorney General Pam Bondi. I understand it is a one-page order, which you have been able to review. Fox News has been able to review. I'm afraid I'm going to ask you some questions that need to be asked, but we won't yet know the answer. So let's start with the one that everyone watching at home is interested in. Who or what names might be the target of this grand jury?
Well, that's a great point. We don't know. We know that Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, has mentioned the names John Brennan, the former CIA director, James Clapper, who had the job before her. But I want to be very clear on the air. We don't know if their names are going before the grand jury. For anybody that has, talked about former President Barack Obama seeing charges, we're told by multiple law enforcement sources that's not going to happen because of the immunity that he enjoys as a former president because of the Supreme Court decision last year that came to actually benefit current President Trump. So while we don't know the names, Will, we know that those are possible names, and we know the Justice Department is serious enough and believes that it has enough evidence to take this to a grand jury. If I may just add in here, a few weeks ago, the Attorney General announced a strike force to go through some of these documents, and within a couple of weeks feels that she has enough evidence to go forward to this grand jury. So it directs an unnamed federal prosecutor to take this evidence to a grand jury, but the name of that federal prosecutor not clear at this moment.
Okay, just a couple more quick questions, David.
Sure.
Sorry to push the limits of your knowledge, but I want to make sure that we address all the things that are not only in your report, but in everyone's mind as well. The name, as well, in addition to Clapper and Brennan, that people will be wondering about will be Hillary Clinton. I understand we do not yet have those names. We'll be waiting to hear what names are in that referral to a grand jury. The next thing everyone will want to know, David, is what are the potential charges?
Well, the potential charges, and I want to use the word potential, would be lying to a federal official, which is a felony to do so. If you lie to an FBI agent or you lie to another federal official, there could be charges involved with there, and I'm told those could be the most likely. That's something that we saw in the John Durham investigation. He was the former special counsel that was appointed by then Attorney General Bill Barr, and those are the types of charges that he used in his cases. He actually lost both times in court, but he did secure a plea deal with a former FBI attorney for falsifying a document. So those seem to be, or that seems to be, when I say those, I should say that because that's just one charge. But that's the charge in talking to sources that people have been eyeing for weeks. But this letter, this initial letter, signed by the Attorney General that we reviewed does not say anything about specific charges. It just directs an unnamed prosecutor, hey, you have jurisdiction that's out of your normal jurisdiction. You can go anywhere in the United States, and you could bring this evidence before a grand jury.
And a grand jury will come back with formal charges, a formal indictment. But a prosecutor, whoever that may be, as you point out, can and should make suggestions to a grand jury on which way they decide the evidence points. Ultimately, they decide whether or not there's probable cause for an indictment. Last question for you, David.
Sure.
The one-page order, which you have reviewed, suggests it is an unnamed prosecutor, but it seemed to open up, and I'm listening to you intently here, it seemed to open up potential jurisdiction to anywhere that seems appropriate to that prosecutor. So I take it this doesn't necessarily mean it would be in Washington, D.C., not necessarily in New York, potentially could be filed charges anywhere in the United States.
Yeah, that's what we're told. We're told that the Attorney General has the ability to confer that ability on any everyday federal prosecutor to give that jurisdiction to sort of widen out for the entire United States. And we're being told that this is not a special prosecutor or a special counsel, as we saw with Jack Smith and John Durham and Robert Hur. We're told this is just a federal prosecutor that is being given this temporary jurisdiction to take this before a grand jury. But at this point, it's not being referred to as a special counsel.
Just to complete the OCD of my curiosity, David, we've covered who, what, and where. I am compelled to ask you then when. Any sense of timeline on this grand jury?
I'm told that it could be months before anything actually happens as far as seeing any sort of results from the grand jury. It's not clear how long grand juries sit in each different jurisdiction. They're empaneled for different amounts of times. I've covered cases before where one grand jury hears some evidence and they're just getting ready to say, we're going to indict, and then their term and their service is over, so another grand jury comes in. I think that in speaking to the people we spoke to, they want to move quickly on this, but it all depends on what the grand jury wants to do and the amount of evidence. But I'm told that any indictments, I want to be clear, if there are indictments, because grand juries can come back and say, we don't think there's enough evidence for indictments, that may take a little while.
Okay, David Spunt, excellent breaking news today on Attorney General Pam Bondi forwarding an order to a grand jury, to a prosecutor to seek a grand jury on the evidence we now know on what is called the RUSSIAGATE hoax. Just to recap, Attorney General Pam Bondi directed a U.S. federal prosecutor to take that evidence to a grand jury relating to the alleged conspiracy to tie then 2016 candidate Donald Trump to Russia.
But first, breaking tonight, a major development in the RUSSIAGATE investigation. The Justice Department is taking its case to a grand jury. They are accusing top officials in the Obama administration of conspiring to harm the candidacy and then the presidency of Donald Trump. Correspondent David Spunt explains tonight these new breaking details. Hi, David.
Hi, Jillian. Attorney General Pam Bondi signed this order earlier today directing an unnamed U.S. federal prosecutor to take evidence to a grand jury relating to an alleged conspiracy to tie then 2016 presidential candidate Donald Trump to Russia. Now, Fox News reviewed the one-page order today signed by the Attorney General. A source familiar with the probe also confirms this story. While a DOJ spokesperson declined to comment on the report of an investigation, Fox is told that AG Bondi is taking referrals from the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, quote, very seriously. The source says Bondi believes there is, quote, clear cause for deep concern, end quote, and a need for the next steps. Now, the move comes just a couple of weeks, Jillian, after Gabbard sent a criminal referral revealing what she called, quote, overwhelming intelligence to prove a conspiracy by then President Obama and his national security team to undermine Trump's candidacy and his first term in office. Now, to be clear, there are no charges filed at this point. This is very early in the process. Now, what we're seeing today is taking evidence that the Justice Department believes it has to a grand jury to secure an eventual indictment. Now, we don't know where the grand jury will meet or who would testify. Grand juries determine if there is enough evidence to indict. They may find out there's not. Grand juries in the United States are secretive, and it's normal not to know all the answers at this stage. Again, though, the Justice Department declines comment on any investigation, but Jillian, certainly a story we will continue to follow.
A lot more questions tonight than answers, it sounds like. Thank you, David.
So. Thank you.
Just to recap, Attorney General Pam Bondi directed a U.S. federal prosecutor to take that evidence to a grand jury relating to the alleged conspiracy to tie then 2016 candidate Donald Trump to Russia. Let's bring in now two people who have been following this whole thing from the very beginning. That is New York Post columnist and Fox News contributor Miranda Devine and former CIA analyst and the host of the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton show, Buck Sexton. Thank you both for being with us here today. It was only a little bit earlier today on Will Kane Country, the digital show that precedes this show every day at 12 o'clock Eastern Time, that Miranda, you and I were talking about the interest of the American people in this story. A Rasmussen poll shows that well over half of America is following this story intently. And now we have a massive update, a grand jury. What do you think, Miranda?
Well, this is just going to heighten interest despite the best efforts of the complicit media in the complicit RUSSIAGATE media in trying to suppress this and bury it. And look, it seems like very fast work, because remember, it was just the beginning of July 2, that John Ratcliffe set the ball rolling with his release of a review of that original intelligence community assessment, which got the entire RUSSIAGATE story going, saying that Donald Trump's election victory in 2016 was manipulated by Vladimir Putin, which was not true, and it was manufactured intelligence. From then on, Tulsi Gabbard has been declassifying a whole lot of material which just furthers that conspiracy, which was really about covering up for Hillary Clinton and her problems towards the end of her campaign with her pay-for-play Clinton Foundation scandal and her, of course, her email server and the missing emails. And so she needed a diversion, and that is what some of this material shows. Right. Now, it seems fast, like this is a month. However, Tulsi Gabbard has been working behind the scene for months, just extracting this material. You would think, as the Director of National Intelligence, it would be easy for her to get her hands on this material, but she has had to battle the deep state at every agency, at every step. Doesn't matter if there are new Trump appointees in charge, the people who are blocking access to those materials, they came up against a very tough person in Tulsi Gabbard, and she's managed to get a lot of this material, and I think we're now seeing the fruits of that.
You heard Miranda bring up Hillary Clinton. This is from, as a reminder, from the declassified Durham Annex, page 11. HRC approved Julia's idea about Trump and Russian hackers hampering U.S. elections. That should distract people from her own missing emails, especially if this affair goes to the Olympic level. Now, this story, as we pointed out, and again, you can check it out on Spotify or Apple, that Miranda and I had a long conversation, which she wrote about in the New York Post, was covered exhaustively in the mainstream media in 2016. Some well over 2,000 minutes of coverage. The story you're now hearing today, and have heard over the last week or so, has only been reported on something like 2 minutes in ABC, CBS, and NBC. 1/1000th of the original coverage. It'll be hard, Buck, to cover this up now, a potential grand jury. So I'm going to go to you, what I talked about with David. Names: Brennan, Clapper, Hillary Clinton. Who do you think we will see potentially coming out of this grand jury?
Well, Will, it's certainly a step toward accountability for the soft coup attempt that you and me and Miranda and many of us have been dealing with and covering for a decade now. But it certainly is worth that coverage, because you're talking about an effort that involved the weaponization of government and of law enforcement agencies, of the deep state, of the media, of the Democrat Party, from the top down, as you mentioned, Hillary Clinton, to effectively nullify a presidential election and destroy a presidential administration. It's really hard to think of something more serious than that. And I think, at a minimum, getting the information out, which I know DNI Gabbard and others in the intel community are very focused on doing, that's critical because of the need for political accountability. But now we're looking at the possibility of legal accountability. And I would just remind everyone that we don't have to have this standard in this country where only Republicans ever have to face, in the case of Trump, wrongfully face charges and the legal system. It needs to be a both ways thing. They have to start to suffer the consequences of their misdeeds, of their violations of statute. And if that includes former senior members of the intelligence community, let me tell you, John Brennan, for example, ruthless with people who violated statutes. In some cases, I know people in the agency, CIA, who say was a particularly nasty fellow if somebody broke any statute that has to do with intelligence. So why he all of a sudden would get special treatment in this situation, given the gravity of what he did, it's beyond me. I would like to see where this goes. I'd like to see what the grand jury does. But for the first time, I think, Will, there are people who are involved in this soft coup who are starting to sweat. This is serious. AG Bondi and the Trump administration are not playing games.
No. In fact, let's take a quick look back at the accusations in the timeline. Here it is on your screen. The FBI knew a hoax came from Hillary Clinton and her campaign. They ignored then the key intelligence. The Clinton campaign then used or possibly coordinated with the Obama FBI to accelerate the narrative, put it under the patina of an investigation, then leaked that out to the press. The FBI then placed thousands of docs in burn bags for destruction, but that was found by Kash Patel. And it shows that Hillary Clinton approved to concoct the plan that Donald Trump was colluding with Russia. Really quickly, back to you, Buck. I know you're not an attorney, but you are very well versed in the law. You're very intelligent, and you have been involved in intelligence agencies. You heard me ask David Spunt about potential charges. Essentially, he said something about lying to a law enforcement officer. Do you see, in any sense, what those charges might be for, as you point out, the legal accountability?
I think that you're going to run into some problems. That would be a U.S. 1001. This is very common. You know, Will, I did terrorism investigations at the Intel Division of the NYPD, working with the FBI in many cases. And that was a common statute, right? Some guy's lying about something in the course of the terrorism investigation. Hey, did you try to buy explosives from this guy on this day, whatever it may be? And they get them on that. Problem is, I believe the statute is 5 years. There's some ways you can extend that statute. So I think something more like seditious conspiracy is what you might be seeing here, because the statute on that may extend enough. But honestly, there are so many, there are truly thousands of federal criminal statutes. And as we've seen from the administration before this, they're willing to get very creative. I have a feeling that a massive conspiracy to undo the Trump administration from the inside tripped up some statutes that they may decide are going to be brought to the forefront here.
And Buck, you and I have had long conversations about the breadth of the federal criminal code. It's almost literally unquantifiable. I think they've put together a congressional task force to try to quantify the number of laws out there that now exist within federal law. Last question to you, Miranda, and let's go back to media. You had this incredible quote in your New York Post column that we talked about earlier today from Mark Elias, who is really one of the central figures in the Steele dossier's creation. And he was begging, imploring the media not to cover what you and I and Buck are talking about today. He's begging the media to say this is just another story of misuse of power of the authoritarian Donald Trump. A grand jury impanelment against whoever it may be is hard to continue to dismiss as the misuse of power. I will be curious to see if that 2 minutes of coverage on ABC, CBS, and NBC can't turn into a more appropriate amount of attention.
Yes, I think that they will be hard-pressed to ignore or suppress this news. But, of course, that 2 minutes of paltry attention that they have paid thus far has been mainly taken up with trying to debunk the information, with giving John Brennan and Mark Elias and the like a platform to defend themselves. So that's probably what they'll continue to do. But I just think of John Ratcliffe, who made some very prescient comments yesterday when he was being interviewed by Maria Bartiromo, where he said, this conspiracy continues to this day. So I don't think we have any worry about statute of limitations. I think we're talking about throughout the Biden administration and maybe even beyond.
Fascinating. And we will, I promise you, here on The Will Cain Show, dig into that unquantifiable federal criminal code to see what could be the potential charges here that could come out of a grand jury. All right, Miranda, Buck, thanks for being on call, jumping on quickly, and having a fascinating conversation on this breaking news.
Thanks, Will.
Thanks, Will.
Joining us tonight to talk about the manhunt that is now underway in his state is Montana Republican Senator Steve Daines. He serves on the Foreign Relations Committee as well. Sir, thanks for taking time with us this evening. We're going to return to that manhunt story going on in your state in just a moment. But I want to ask you about our leading story tonight. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, has launched a grand jury probe into the RUSSIAGATE scandal. She's obviously following a criminal referral from Tulsi Gabbard. They believe that Democrats back in 2016 conspired to hurt the candidacy and the presidency of Donald Trump. Obama administration officials, of course, say we never said Russia interfered in the 2016 election. We said they tried to. What's your take on all of this?
Look, this is a serious matter. The Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has issued a criminal referral to the Attorney General of the United States. I can't tell you, and we can't all say how many times we heard the Democrats talking about President Trump and Russia and interference in the elections by the Russians to help President Trump. President Trump said without stuttering over and over again, these are lies, this is nonsense. I hope justice will finally prevail and President Trump will be exonerated by the Justice Department, perhaps a grand jury, as we see what the truth is behind these lies spread by the Democrats, this collusion theory between the Russians and President Trump in the election. 2016.
Not much detail known publicly yet tonight, but we will be tracking it as it develops, of course. Back to this manhunt, sir, going on in your state. The suspect, Michael Brown's been on the lam now for more than 72 hours. As much as people who know him are talking about how mentally ill he is, he can't be in that poor shape if he's managing to subsist on his own and evade capture for that long.
Well, it's such a tragic situation. Of course, the town of Anaconda has been just been a gut punch, as there have been 4 citizens there that were murdered, the bartender and 3 patrons on Friday. But Michael Brown, as you described, was suffering mental illness challenges. He went in and shot those 4 in that bar, and then he fled just west of Anaconda. I mean, this is a local. He knows the territory well, but I can tell you I'm very proud of law enforcement. We've got the FBI, we've got our county sheriffs across multiple counties, as well as highway patrol resources and others that have got a perimeter around him. We're hoping that we will bring him and apprehend him, bring him to justice soon, but he's hiding just west of Anaconda. And we pray for the safety of those brave men and women who are operating a 24/7 operation. They're using infrared cameras. They've got dogs. They've had a few hits with the dogs. I'm hopeful that very shortly our law enforcement is going to bring this guy and apprehend him and bring him out.
I believe it's called Deer Lodge National Forest. That's in your state. It's partially closed right now because law enforcement is searching for him, for the suspect there. We noticed here at the show that you tweeted out, or you retweeted, excuse me, this morning let me pull this up for you. An Interior Department post. They wrote, on Monday, August 4th, in honor of the 5th anniversary of the Great American Outdoors Act, all entrance fees at Interior managed public lands will be waived. Find your park and see firsthand how this law is in helping enrich the visitor experience. We bring this up because are you concerned that you have this madman potentially on the lam here on these public lands and, people might encounter him?
Yeah, well, no, there's no problem with our national parks. They're fine. We know where this guy's at. I'm getting regular updates from local law enforcement that are right there on the front lines. We know where he's at. We've got a good perimeter around him at the moment. We're going to bring this guy out one way or the other. Dead or alive, we're going to get him. Very confident, but it's located in a very tight radius just outside the town of Anaconda, just in southwest Montana.
Senator, we really wish you the best going forward with this. We hope that he is apprehended and brought to justice, and we wish the best to all your constituents who are, a lot of them, impacted by this. Really living in fear, it sounds like, this week. Thank you so much for taking time with us, sir.
All right, welcome back. A Fox News alert. Attorney General Pam Bondi signed an order just about 45 minutes ago. It was released that directs a U.S. federal prosecutor to take evidence to a grand jury that's related to the alleged conspiracy to tie then 2016 candidate Donald Trump to Russia. All right, let's bring in Fox News contributor Jonathan Turley to react. Professor, it's great to see you, and I have many questions for you, all of them legal in nature, but I feel compelled, Professor, to start with one that maybe isn't so legal, and that is this. I know that I personally, and many people watching, have a bit of cynicism and fatigue when it comes to potential accountability for elected officials or government officials. So I want you to take today's news and tell me, do you think we should, watching, feel more hope today after this impanelment of a grand jury for accountability, or should we still remain somewhat cynical, somewhat fatigued?
Well, Will, it's a very good question. I don't think this is an excuse for cynicism, but I do believe it's a reason for continued skepticism. But there is still hope here. This is the first necessary step to finding out about the real Russian conspiracy. There never was a Russian collusion conspiracy. That was hatched by the Clinton campaign. They secretly funded the Steele dossier. They denied that to the media, and they laid out this very successful political hit job using the media, using the government. It's amazing how much the public still doesn't know. But in the last few weeks, this administration has given us information that we haven't seen before. I've been following this, writing about it for years. Some of this is new stuff, and it's startling. Okay,
so it's a hopeful first step in what would be a long road to accountability. Let's ask some of the legal questions now. As I understand it, Professor, the grand jury could come back if they find sufficient evidence and probable cause with an indictment against as of yet unnamed individuals. Let's start with the charges. And you've been following this story for, well, about a decade. So what does the evidence point to? Like, what could be the charges coming out of a grand jury?
Well, Will, I think today about half the lawyers in the city went on retainer. About 40 minutes ago, you just lost about 50% of the bar in terms of client base. The reason is that there are a lot of people, a lot of powerful people in this town that have already been mentioned in some of these releases. The most at risk, the most exposed include people like John Brennan, who I've been writing a lot about. It's very hard to square his testimony before Congress with what was just released. And he and Clapper, who is also at risk here, just published an op-ed in the New York Times. If they didn't have counsel before, they should get it now, because I was astonished by that column. I was astonished the New York Times published it because it seems to me strikingly untrue. But they say that they didn't rely on the Steele dossier, which has been largely debunked, the one funded by the Clinton campaign. These documents indicate that Brennan may have personally intervened to guarantee that the dossier was part of this infamous assessment that occurred at the very end of the Obama administration. Now, Obama himself is likely in the clear because he has immunity due to the recent Supreme Court decision. He can thank Donald Trump for that. But the rest of them are exposed, and there's a very long list.
Including Hillary Clinton?
It can be Clinton. Now, the key to remember here is that even if the statute of limitations has run, these people are likely to be questioned again. So they can be subject to the trifecta of the most common charges, the ones the prosecutors love the most, which are things like obstruction, false statements to federal investigators, and perjury. The Obama administration used those quite widely, so did the special counsel. Those are likely to appear again now. So even if the statute of limitations has run, it won't run on new statements. It'll just start again. And if there is a conspiracy, as been suggested by the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, that conspiracy may have elongated that statute of limitations.
Okay, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, perjury. These are all potential charges for potentially defendants who could include Brennan, Clapper, Clinton, among others, which will all be revealed in due time should it come out of a grand jury. Professor Turley, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Will.
Here with all the details, the senior national correspondent, Rich Edson. Rich, what can you tell us? Good evening, Laura. Well, sources tell our Justice Department team that Attorney General Pam Bondi is moving to the next step in her investigation into the intelligence surrounding the 2016 election during the Obama administration. Bondi has personally ordered an unnamed federal prosecutor to present evidence to a grand jury relating to an alleged conspiracy to tie then 2016 presidential candidate Donald Trump to Russia. Justice declined to comment on the investigation. It's unclear where the grand jury will meet, who will testify, or who specifically prosecutors will try to indict. A week and a half ago, the Justice Department announced it had created a strike force to evaluate evidence that Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard had referred to DOJ. Last month, Gabbard declassified intelligence that she maintains shows that in 2016, Obama administration officials manufactured and politicized intelligence to undercut then-President-elect Trump and his incoming administration. Democrats contend that nothing Gabbard has released counters the widely accepted conclusion that Russia meddled to help the Trump campaign. They say Gabbard's allegations are just a distraction. The Justice Department is still early in the process of securing any possible indictment. Prosecutors would take evidence to a grand jury to determine if there's enough to indict. Grand juries do meet in secret, so there is often information presented there that the public will not have access to. Laura?
Here to dissect this seismic development is Mike Davis, founder of the Article 3 Project. Mike, before we get into what the Democrats are saying about this, I want to walk through the process here. Who would be your first witness before this grand jury?
Well, I don't know if they're going to participate. They'll probably claim the Fifth Amendment, but you'd have someone like Brennan, Clapper, Comey. There are a lot of people. Hillary Clinton's campaign, Hillary herself. There is evidence that a lot of President Obama's top officials, maybe even President Obama himself, politicized and weaponized law enforcement and intel agencies to harm President Trump's campaign and help Hillary Clinton's campaign. And they continued this conspiracy to this day. They hobbled his presidency, and they have continued this conspiracy. So now, there are a lot of potential witnesses.
Now, CNN has a big story tonight, essentially saying what Rich Edson just related, that nothing that was released by Gabbard in these documents indicate anything contrary to the idea that Russia was trying to help Donald Trump and hurt Hillary Clinton. That's what they're maintaining throughout this entire thing, basically shrugging off the DNI as just, this is just political hot air to try to help Trump now. Your reaction to that?
I think that is a distraction by these lawfare Democrats. They know they face serious legal jeopardy, the most serious legal jeopardy you can face, including a criminal indictment. So I would say to these lawfare Democrats, if you have nothing to worry about, why are you lawyering up?
Well, at this point, would you expect some lower level staffers at the White House or at the FBI or in the intel community who knew what was going on to try to cut a deal if approached, or, as we've seen in many other cases like this, perhaps themselves, they're fearing they're in legal jeopardy here? Isn't that the way this might proceed, given the fact that all these, the big dogs are going to, say no, Fifth Amendment?
That's exactly right. You're going to see Attorney General Pam Bondi, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, FBI Director Kash Patel, maybe Harmeet Dillon, the head of the Civil Rights Division, working with a U.S. Attorney's office or several U.S. Attorney's offices. We have to step back and remember this. This is the greatest scandal in American history. You had one administration politicize and weaponize intel agencies and law enforcement to go after his political opponents, including and continued when he was the president of the United States. It doesn't get more serious than this. This is a criminal conspiracy. The evidence is clear there's a criminal conspiracy here, and nobody is above the law.
Well, we have particular vulnerability, do we not, for John Brennan, who testified before Congress. The allegations come from, well-placed individuals that he could have committed perjury, along with others who testified before Congress. Do you see that as one of the main charges that could come out of this grand jury?
That's one of the charges is perjury. Another charge that I think is most likely is a conspiracy charge, maybe conspiracy against rights under 18 U.S.C. Section 241. And remember, when you have an ongoing conspiracy, when you are covering up that conspiracy, the statute of limitations does not begin to start tolling. And so this is an ongoing criminal conspiracy. The people who are perpetuating this conspiracy are still covering it up. And so, again, I would say to these lawfare Democrats, lawyer up, because justice is definitely coming.
Yeah, weaponizing the intel community against a candidate or an incoming president. We've never seen anything like that before in American history, if that's what the facts end up showing. Mike, as always, thank you so much.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.